You have a seat. Do you remember your first couch? You know? Do you remember your first couch? I'm asking you, so if you don't remember, take a second, try to search the archives and think, hey, what was my first couch? Like, like the first couch that's yours. You know what I'm talking about? Like it belongs to you. Not like the first couch you slept on at someone else's apartment, like that, not that. And just because it was like, hey, this feels like my little space. Like not that. Like the first couch, I'm going to fill you in on my first couch, right? So our first couch, we had nothing. Brooke was still in college. I was working part-time at a church in Stockbridge. And, sometimes, we don't have anybody like this here at this particular church, but there are some people that when they look at furniture, and they're like, you know what, this thing is disgusting. They look at their furniture in their house, like, this thing is disgusting. It's old, it's nasty, it's gross. Get this out of here. And, of course, somebody's like, well, what do you want us to do with it? And they're like, you know what, I think the church would need that. I think the church needs this. And so they put it in the back of the truck and they try to be like, oh, you're the first people we thought of. It's because it doesn't cost you anything. Take it to the dump, they're going to charge you for that couch to dump it off. You take it to the church, it's like, we get a tax letter. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's right. That couch is worth so much, We just gave it away. Didn't think twice about it, that kind of thing. Anyway, I had one of those couches in my office that I got to take home with me. Now, let me tell you about this couch. It's a love seat. It was super puffy. super poofy. One of the big old poofy armchairs. And I don't know what decade it was from. I'm guessing it was late 80s, maybe early 90s. I don't know. Where I had like a million different colors and little dots. It was like a glitter bomb on it. But it was like wool, like really scratchy wool. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Anybody? And it was a love seat. And so we got to take that home. That was our first couch. And so we were given a couch cover. And it's very girly though, like sheer, had some ruffles on it, and that lasted for a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I want to man this thing up a little bit. I want to go get a legit couch cover. We still could not afford a new couch or even a Craigslist couch, but I could get a couch cover. So I went to the Bed Bath & Beyond, and I was searching, and it just so happened they were having a sale. Or maybe I had one of them blue things that they send you into, what I'm talking about, one of them things. And anyway, so I found the place where they had these couch covers, and I was like, look at this one. And so I got one, so I took it back home. And this was a two-piece couch cover, by the way. So you had one for the couch, and then it had one for the cushions. And it was fan-stinking-tastic. And so you get home, and I'm going to put it together, and I got the one on the couch. It's looking good. It's looking sophisticated. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we are moving up. We just took a step up. Nobody knows what's underneath this thing, and it's good. Well, I go to put the cushions in it. Well, the thing is that I had a kind of little couch that had the wings on it. You know what I'm talking about? It's got a thing, and then when it comes out to the front of the couch, it's got little wings that go out to the side. Well, the couch cover I got was meant for rectangle, not for the rectangle with the wings. And so I was like, shoot. So now I got to go back. So I went back to Bed Bath & Beyond, and I went back there, and sure enough, I told him, I said, look, here's the deal. Ain't nothing wrong with this, and we didn't do nothing on it. Nobody, nothing happened to it. No stains, no nothing. So I'm just returning it. So I'm returning it, and I tell them, I need the one with the wings. I need the wing one. And so they're like, we got those. And so I go back there, and here's the problem. The wing one was $19 more. It was $19 more. We didn't have $19. We did not have $19. And so I said, well, I'm going to keep this one. I went home, and I cut the wings off that thing. and I shoved it in that thing. You know what I'm talking about? I shoved it in there, and it was a perfect little thing, and it sat right down. You know what I'm talking about? Now, when you look at the couch, you can see where the wings used to be. And it was like this. Now I had like a little place to put like a coffee cup. You know what I'm talking about? It was perfect. It was perfect. We were so poor. We didn't have $19 was a big, enormous deal. I tell you what, money can make marriage absolutely miserable, or it can make it memorable. Here's the truth. $19 in that moment, for real, made or broke us, right? We were not miserable. In those moments when we had absolutely nothing, we weren't miserable. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Now, if I needed to go spend $19 this afternoon because I needed something, I can go and spend the extra $19. I didn't plan for it. I can pull off $19 if I can borrow 15 from Brady. Borrow 15 from Brady. So I'm good. You know? The thing is, money can make marriage miserable or it can make it memorable. And honestly, it just comes down to one thing. One single solitary thing. Now, we're in a collection of talks that we started last week called Relationship Killers. And we're talking about this, and I've been hesitant over our first 4 years of church to talk about this. We talk about relationships, but the more conversations I've had, and it's just nonstop, over and over again in my office with folks that are walking through relationship crisis and moments, I said, you know what? We're going to do a series on it, or I'm going to give 4 weeks specifically to marriage. And so I know the reason the hesitancy is because I know there's some people that will push back and say, hey, well, this doesn't apply to me. You know, either, I'm single and I don't want another relationship, or, widow or divorced or fill in the blank, or, hey, we're not even there yet. And so I'm just going to tune you out. This is what I've discovered. Every single couple that I get an opportunity to speak with and talk to, they all have friends that if those friends were equipped in a way to pour into their married friends' lives, that it would actually be a benefit to them. So if that's you, if you're like, hey, I'm not married, and so for the next 3 weeks, I'm just going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to tune out and I'll come back when you're done with this. I hope not, because I guarantee you've got some friends in your lives that really could use you in a moment that maybe you weren't expecting. And if that's not it, then you are in a relationship, and my hope is that maybe you have none of these issues and none of these relationship killers are legitimate threats in your life right now, but just give it time and it will be. Relationship killer number 2, money. Relationship killer number 2, money. Now, I'm going to take the same risk I took last week this week. And the risk is this. I know as someone who speaks in front of people, when I break eye contact for an extended period of time, specifically when I look down and read, that you zone out. But I just don't know another way around it. I could rephrase this, and I could tell it to you in some way, and I could maybe even put a joke or two in it to keep you entertained. I think the value is in just me reading the description straight out of the Bible. And so I would like to invite you for a couple of, just maybe a minute and a half, to really focus in on the words I'm going to read, because it's a perfect description of a healthy marriage. Now within it, there are 4 key words, and the 4 key words inside of this passage are the keys to any kind of healthy marriage. 100% every time, these 4 things are the key to a healthy marriage, right? So they're in here. You might, if you were here last week, you already remember them. If you weren't here, see if you can see if you can pick them out. If you were here last week, we're going to test and see if your memory works. I'm going to read to you out of Ephesians chapter 5, starting with verse 21. Here's the perfect description of a healthy marriage. You ready? Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. What are the 4 words? Word number 1, Jesus. It starts in the very first sentence, out of reverence for Christ. So here at Foundation, we end our mission statement with, and Jesus is in the lead. And so we like to ask that question often. Whatever we're talking about, is Jesus leading in it? And so in this moment, we're talking about marriage. We're asking that question. If you want a healthy marriage, we're asking that question first. Is Jesus leading, or is someone else trying to get Jesus to come along in your plan? The second word, submission. Now, what's interesting is this word submission applies to both, but it has a special emphasis specifically on the woman towards the husband. And we asked the question last week, why is the author of this particular book so interested in emphasizing submission from a woman's point of view towards her husband? And it's not equal. He's not an equal opportunity offender. He doesn't go back to the husband and say, oh, and you should submit too. He drills in on the wife and says, hey, submission, submission, submission. And I wondered why that. This makes no sense to me. In fact, it kind of is offensive in our particular culture. Why would you be so heavy on the word submission? And we kind of landed last week that maybe if we're honest, that it's probably a word that a lot of women naturally struggle with. I don't know. I'm not a woman. But in conversations I've had, it's like, man, this is a place where there is a little welling up inside of me that just makes me wonder. Now, on the same token, the third word behind submission is love. Now, what's interesting here is that just like he goes in hardcore on submission for the wives, he goes hardcore on the husbands in this particular word. In fact, he doesn't even mention that wives need to love their husbands. And obviously that's not the case, right? But he harps on it. In fact, over half of the verses I just read are all about husbands, love your wives. And then he says it 3 or 4 different ways. And then it's like he knows that men are hard-headed. He says, here's the deal. You're supposed to love your wife. And how do you love your wife? Like Christ loves the church. So for the women, he just says, hey, submit to your husbands. And then he moves on. With the guys, he says, hey, you love your wife. They're not going to get that. So love your wife like Christ loves the church. They're not going to get that either. This is how he did that. He gave himself up for her. And in case that didn't work, he says, well, what about like your body? Like you got to love her like at least like you love yourself. That's minimum. That's where we start. And he just goes on and on about it. Now, why is that? Why is he not an equal opportunity offender towards the wife here? Maybe it's because he knows as a guy that's one 4-letter word we struggle with. And maybe there's some ego and some pride tied up into who we are naturally. That sometimes make sure that we always stay a little more important than our wife to ourselves. And that he's reminding us that's out of order. The last ones, we got Jesus. We got submission, we got love. 4th key is respect, right? Those are the 4 keys to marriage. Now, we got 4 keys to marriage, and we're going to read that passage at the beginning of our talk each and every week for the next 4 weeks. Now, this is our TV timeout public service announcement here. I've warned you for the last 2 weeks. I actually forgot to warn the 9 o'clock, and so they're going to be shocked next week if they weren't paying attention. Week 3 is the week that if you've got kiddos you haven't had the talk with, that you're going to need to have the talk this week, or you're going to need to figure out something else for them to be, because next week we are going all in. You know what I'm saying? Like we're in. You know what I'm talking about? Like you're picking up when I'm putting down. I know some of you are making jokes to your friends right now. Like I know what's happening, and I'm okay with it. I did it on purpose to make sure you're still listening. Week 3, this is your final warning. I had another joke, but I need to move on. I gotta go. So when we talk about week 2, we're not at week 3, though I guess everybody wishes we were. But week 2, right? Week 2. Money. So when we talk about money and we talk about finances, specifically in relationships, oftentimes we like to split people into one of 2 categories. Spenders or savers, right? Now I'm just curious, if you would say, hey, I'm a spender. No, let's start with savers. If you're a saver, let me see some hands. If you're watching online, just throw up that hand emoji. Okay, cool. All right, so if you're a spender, I'm just curious. 2 hands. There we go. We got dancing. We got dancing in the back. There we go. Now it's a party. It's a spending party. Is anyone here, any of you spenders, any of you have a Target problem? Just raise your hearth and hand. Just raise your hearth and hand if you got a Target problem. Yeah, that's right. You get that? Matt's gone. Man, people who don't shop at Target are like, what's hearth and hand? Oh, bless your Magnolia. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I had my credit card stolen a couple weeks ago, and I didn't report it to anyone because there's no chance that thief spends more than my wife at Target, and so we're just gonna let it roll. This is our savings plan. This is the way we're gonna do it. We're gonna save so much money. It's gonna be fantastic. Our money issues are much deeper than whether or not to spend or save. Much deeper than spend or save. In fact, I came across this and I really liked it. So I've taken, unfortunately, I don't remember where I saw it, but I've taken, I held on to it, and I've tweaked it a little bit to fit into a message context. But I just love the way they broke it down really simple. There's only 4 things you can do with money, right? There's only 4 things you can do with money. You can owe, you can grow, you can live, and you can give. That's it. That's it. There's 4 things you do with money. You can owe, you can grow, you can live, you can give. When you talk about owe, you talk about debt, right? You're talking about debt. Mortgage, credit card, car payments, student loans, personal loans, right? Oscar Wilde said it this way. He said, anyone who lives within their means suffers from a lack of imagination. And the truth is, money can make a marriage memorable or miserable. Comes down to one thing. Now, this is what, when we talk about owe, right? We got the 4 ways: owe, grow, live, give. When we talk about owe, we talk about debt. This is what memorable would look like. There's a new song out. Anybody here listen to country music? If not, you should. You know what I'm talking about? You should. Jordan Davis and Luke Bryant got a song out called Buy Dirt. I don't know if y'all heard it or not, but there's a song. It's one of my favorite songs right now. And there's a line that says, hey, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy dirt. And it goes on to talk about all the things that you could do in the dirt that you buy. You know, it talks about pencil marks, you know, in the house as the kids are getting older. It talks about watching grass grow. It talks about all the things that just happen in those moments when you decide, hey, you know what? I'm gonna have a mortgage. I'm gonna buy a piece of property, or you know, whatever it is that you're going to do. I'm going to have a house, and we're going to put roots real deep in the community, and this is where we're going to grow up. This is where my kids are going to grow up, you know. It talks about that. And it's not like the most theologically sound, incredible song, but it's a really good song. It really just puts in perspective, like, okay, you can make memories when you have good debt, when it's manageable, when it's like, hey, this makes sense for us, when it's within our means, like those kind of things, like when it's a smart financial move, you can have. It's a doable thing. You can make memories. But let me tell you what miserable looks like. Miserable is you bought so much dirt you actually can't pay for it. And then at some point, someone else takes your dirt from you. And then they have the memories. Because you started paying on it for them. And they take over where you picked up at a much more reduced rate. It's miserable. We talk about grow. You have a plan for the future, right? Maybe you have a savings account. Maybe you've got some retirement. Maybe you got some investments. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you got a CD somewhere. Or maybe grandmother left you something, or a life insurance policy was handed down, or who knows what. You got this plan for the future, right? Got a plan? Or maybe you're like me at one point where you were just banking on one of your kids to grow up and be famous, you know? That's not a bad plan, you know? I live in constant fear that I've thrown away trillions of dollars of my daughter's art and she's going to grow up to be like the next like Banksy or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? And I've just thrown away my retirement. Where does money come from when you can no longer make money? Let me tell you what memorable looks like in terms of grow. This is what memorable looks like. Your kids will be sitting at a really fancy desk in probably a fairly ornate room. And sitting on the other side of that desk will be a funeral director. And they're going to take a folder and they're going to slide it toward your children. And they're going to look at them and they're going to say, hey, your dad or mom, whoever's passed away. And so they actually already chose everything. They picked it out. And they paid for it. It's all done. I know this is hard enough. I can't imagine what it would be like if you had to figure out all these details. And in that moment when you need to gather all of those memories and put them to good use, and you're telling stories, and those moments that grow side of how you use money is an incredible memory maker. But let me tell you what miserable looks like. It's the same room. It's the same desk. Instead of a folder, he slides you a binder. It's got price sheets in it. And then they ask you to get up from the desk and they walk you into the room next to it where it's got caskets everywhere and different tiny little Barbie doll vaults that are supposed to represent what you're going to put the person you care so much about into the ground. And by each one of them, there's a price list. And inside, you are torn because you know without a shadow of a doubt that you loved whoever it is you're about to put in the ground with everything you've got. And for some reason, our brain connects the amount that we spend to the amount that we love. And we know that we can't possibly spend as much as we want to show them how much we love them. And so we're miserable because we're grieving a loss and we're grieving the fact that we can't actually do what we want to do. Now, if you ever get in that situation, because not everybody plans ahead, I hope you call me. And I'll go in that room with you and I will talk you into the cheapest thing in the room. Because I'm going to remind you that Jesus will be back any moment now, and you don't want to lock him up too tight because you want to be able to get out, you know? So we don't need a 50-year warranty or a 40-year warranty. We don't care. Earth, do what you want to with the body. Jesus is going to make it new. By the time we walk out of there, your dad will be in a paper bag, you know? And you'll feel good about it. So you can owe, you can grow. I got a grow joke. Oh, pushing up daisies. Okay, you can live, right? We got week-to-week expenses. You know what these are. You got groceries, gas, entertainment, extracurricular activities, clothes, candles, and cute baskets from Target, all the necessities, you know, all those things. This is our budget of this is how we operate. This is what's what, you know. For us, we've been on this streak of watching these Marvel movies in timeline. And so on Friday nights, in our little budget, we got to have pizza, and then we sit down and watch a movie. And every once in a while, we get a special dessert, you know. Just kind of depends. It's all those little things. When we talk about couples and specifically those relationships, memorable looks like this. It's no matter how much or how little you have, the two of you are on the same page. You're in agreement and you just make it work. You just cut the wings off the cushion. And you're both okay with it. Because that's just where you are. And that's not miserable when you're in it together. That's memorable. Miserable, though, is something that's probably fairly common in seasons of all of our lives. And it's this constant arguing back and forth about who spent what. It's always someone's fault for spending too much or not understanding how money works. It's the conversation about, well, now you need to get a second job or a third. Because you value the things you can hold or the experiences you want to go on more than the time with your family. And so you leverage that time so you can spend more on what you want to. Those are hard conversations. And at the end of the day, it just leads to misery. Fourth part. You can owe, you can grow, you can live, you can give. Memorable looks like this. You realize you're a part of something bigger than yourself. That God can take your small little percentage and do something incredibly significant with it. Miserable looks like Ebenezer Scrooge. We make our kids watch that movie because we don't want them to grow up and act like that. And yet when we get grown up, we act like that. Memorable or miserable depends on one thing. One single solitary thing. There's a guy by the name of Matthew who is a really good friend of Jesus, and he actually is pretty expert opinion on money. He was a tax collector, and so he knew how to get money, how to count money, how to keep money, save money, how to borrow money, how to sometimes swindle some money. He was all about some money, and he was good at it. He begins to follow Jesus and leaves that world behind. And so it's interesting when he writes about finances or money, it's interesting because he has a really great perspective as coming from some place that says, hey, this is what my world revolves around, and then beginning to follow Jesus, which has a very different revolving center at the center of what he's doing with Jesus. So it's interesting when he gives his perspective, and this is what he says. This is the one thing. You ready? Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So whether or not you owe, grow, live, or give, if you've got any issues or any successes in those four areas, it comes down to one thing. Where's your heart? Where's your heart? You see, the truth is that money problems always start with and end at the heart. Money problems always start with and end at the heart. Because money is an action item. Money is not where it starts with. Money is actually what becomes of what we believe internally. So what we think, what we value, what we believe, the things that we think that we are, the things that we hope to be, all those things start internally. And then what we do with our money, whether it becomes memorable or miserable, is an outflow of what we have already predetermined we want to believe. Money's an action item. Now, a lot of us think that money is the cause, but it's not. It's the effect. The causes are hard. The effect is the memorable and miserable as a result of the money we got. And so in our minds, oftentimes we convince ourselves, man, if I just had some more money, then I'd be fine. It's a lie. Here's the truth. There's some of you in this room that are going to make gobs and gobs and gobs of money. And you have an enormous potential to be completely miserable. And there are some of you in this room where your highest earnings and your potential are 5 years behind you. And every year it'll just get less and less. Not because of your intellect or your ability, just because that's just what's going to happen. And you have enormous potential to live a life that's incredibly memorable. It has nothing to do with the amount of money and everything to do with the one thing. Where's your heart? So when we kind of take a look at these four things, we've got to ask the question, in those four areas of the way that you can use money, where is your heart in them? So we talk about what you owe, right? The debt, the buy dirt, the cars, student loan, all those things, right? The personal loans. Let me ask you a couple questions and keep score in your head. Is Jesus in the lead in your owe? Is Jesus in the lead? Is what you owe, is it contributing to the other three keys to a healthy marriage? We got Jesus in the lead, We've got submission and love and respect. Is what you owe contributing in a positive way to your love, the respect, and the submission? How about in your grow? Let me talk about your plan for the future. Let me ask the question, is Jesus in the lead there? Is it adding to or taking away from your submission, love, and respect? And the way you live week to week, your weekly budget. Is Jesus in the lead? Is it adding to or taking away from your submission, love, and respect? In your give. What's your heart say about it? Is Jesus in the lead? Is it adding to or taking away from love, submission, respect? The truth is, if you want to change, if you're saying, hey, I got an issue in one of these 4 areas, or maybe 2 of these areas, if you want to change that, you got to change your heart. But the way you start a heart change is you make a decision to act differently. So it's got to start here. You got to make a decision. That's an internal thing. But then you got to say, okay, what am I going to do? Like, okay, if I believe that I actually do have an issue in one of these 4 areas, if one of these 4 areas is actually killing my relationship because Jesus is in the lead and it's taken away from the submission, the love, and the respect of the keys to a healthy marriage. And if that's the case, okay, well, my heart is convicted, all right? My heart is changing. But here's a really cool thing. If we don't pair action with a heart decision or change, then eventually that heart decision just falls back into whatever's easiest, the path of least resistance. And you'll go back into the same habits you're in. So if right now in this moment, you're like, hey, okay, yeah, on 2 of those, so what do I do about it? So I wanted this to be very practical. So I have some very practical steps for you to take, depending on which one you said, hey, I got a thing, right? So let's talk about O issues for a second. If you were like, hey, I got an O issue, and Jesus is not in the lead, and it takes away from the respect, submission, and love in the relationship that I'm in, I got an issue. Here's the cool thing. So we launched groups, sign-ups today for first-time folks. One of our 12 groups that we've got going on this semester is called Financial Peace. And it's an incredible way for you to address your O issues. It's 10 weeks long. And you get together, and that's it's concentrated. It's a Jesus approach, a biblical approach to say, hey, I want to make sure my O issues are lined up and directed in the right direction. And so at the white tents, right outside, we're going to have all the group leads out there. You can hang out and talk with them. There's a little table that says Financial Peace on it. It's the one group that's not like the rest of them. The rest of them are like, Bible study and relationships. This one's relationships, but specifically, it's called Financial Peace, right? Man, you should jump in that. You should make a commitment. It'll start in the next couple weeks. You should go out there, at least have a conversation and say, hey, here it is. So if you've already made a heart decision that, man, I got an issue, the way that you continue that heart decision is to have an action. That's what you need to do. If you've got grow issues, if you're like, okay, I got no plan. Like my plan is that my kid is maybe going to grow up and be a famous baseball player, or my daughter's going to be, whatever it is, right? If that's the plan, if that's what you're banking on, that's an issue, right? That's an issue. So we got a couple things. First, if you're like, hey, I don't even know where to start, right? I don't even know where to start. Come talk to me. I know a couple financial planners that I trust, and I'll give you a good name. Right? Come talk to me. I don't want you Googling grow issues. Don't Google that. Don't Google that. Don't Google that. It's week 3. Week 3. Oh boy. Don't Google it. Come ask me. I'll point you in a direction, And then in particular, today, we have an organization that's closely tied to Foundation called Christian Financial Resources. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. And we got a little booth set up outside a tent and a table outside. that you can take a look at if you got the grow issues. If you got live issues, right? If you got live issues, so when I do pre-marriage stuff with couples that are getting started, finance is a big deal. And so we walk through it, we talk through it, all those things, and I encourage them to say, hey, you need to be able to share the financial, stuff that's kind of moving and going forward. And so I give them an app. My wife and I have been using an app for a few years, more than a few years. Gosh, I don't know how long, like a decade. It's called MoneyWiz, right? And we've been using it. And it's got some glitches in it every once in a while. I can go in and fix it. It's fine. And it works really good. And so I tell them, hey, you should do this. And so you enter your transactions in it, and you can see where you're at, your bank balance, and all that kind of stuff. And you can kind of see what each other is spending. I think that's a very healthy practice between folks that are married. I think it's an incredibly healthy practice between folks that are married. And so people, that's what they use, right? Well, so I've been looking into it because I knew I needed to have a very practical tool. And so I talked to a few folks that use a different app. And so I also want to make sure I'm doing what I've asked you to do. And so tomorrow, I'm going to discontinue what we've been using for about 10 years because every once in a while, I do have to fix a technical issue, and some folks are just not tech savvy. So I don't want to tell you, hey, go use that. But from what I understand, Dave Ramsey's got a plan called the Every Dollar app. And there's a free version, and there's a version you can spend on. It's a little pricey, it's about $10 a month. But there's a free version, and it does the same thing, except for the reviews that I've read on it's very much more stable than the one that I use. And the folks that I talked to or text with or emailed with, all of them just raved about, hey, this is really great. So tomorrow I'm going to discontinue that, and I'm going to start doing what I've asked you to do, and we're going to start our journey on this new app also. And so I would encourage you to take a look at it. You can build budgets inside of it, and then when you go and spend at McDonald's, you can pre-aside McDonald's as a food, and it just says, hey, we had this much on eat out food, and you can see what your budget is, all those kind of things. It's a healthy spending habit. So if you've got issues in the live part of it, there's your app. It's called the Every Dollar app. If you've got give issues, now this is always a touchy one in church, and let me be super upfront with you. The church as a whole, globally, has earned a reputation of being idiots with money. And so I'm fine if you say, hey, I don't trust the church as far as I can throw the church, and there's a lot of us, so you can't throw us very far. I'm fine with you having trust issues with the church. And it's okay for you to trust God with your money before you ever trust the church. But I do think that every single person should practice generosity. And so if you're not at a place where you trust Foundation, like you have no idea what we do with our money, and you're like, I can't see how you use anything, I'm okay with all that, right? I say give it time, and that us as a church, we need to earn the right for you to invest on this end of it. I get it. We got baggage. But you still should be generous. And so if you need some places to give towards as you're trying to figure out, hey, can I trust the church? There's some 5-star nonprofits in our community that I think you should give to. There's one called Coweta Force that works with folks who have substance abuse issues. And Hank and that crew over there are as good as it gets in our county, in our community. You can give to them. Bridging the Gap is just down the road from us, and they work with Food Insecure here in this county and some of the surrounding counties. They continue to grow. The need continues to grow. You can trust them. Every Saturday you can go over and you can see the result of people taking home boxes of food, right? Everybody should be giving. I hope that the church as a whole earns the right for you to partner with what God is doing here. But I get it takes time. For some of you, it'll take weeks, some of you months, some of you years. And it is what it is. The church as a whole has done it to ourselves. But that's no excuse for you not to be generous, right? So if you got a give issue, figure out this week, how can I let go of something so that someone else can take hold of it and do something I wouldn't have done with it? The truth is, hands down, that if you answered in a negative way to some of those things, like, man, this particular area of my life is making me miserable, it's not memorable at all, it's miserable for us. You can change. You can change. It begins with you believing that there's an issue that needs to be addressed. And the second step is saying, I'm going to take an action that's going to back up that belief that I've created this morning. And that's my hope, that every single one of us would recognize a place to take a step in the right direction, and we would do something about it. The truth is, the number 2 relationship killer is money. But the truth about relationship killers is that they can also be relationship givers. It doesn't have to be miserable. It can be memorable. The buy dirt kind of memorable. Would you pray with me? Father, we are grateful. We are grateful